Is CEX the biggest rip-off going? I see this narrative a lot on the internet, and I get it and I don't get it. So I think this stems from the fact that people really don't like how much they are given for taking things into CEX. But they also then, because of that, decide that they don't like CEX when it comes to buying things from them. I agree, CEX don't give enough or very much at all for things that you sell to them. However, I think if you're a smart seller, you just wouldn't sell to CEX in the first place. Granted, if no one ever sold to CEX, then people like me wouldn't have anywhere to buy from because they need the stock to buy in the first place. But like, there will always be people that just sell to CEX for convenience. Because you got to remember that time is always money. Your convenience is always money. People spend a lot of money for things to be more convenient all the time. That is human nature. Also, a lot of you guys are not already following me, so if we could subscribe, that'd be awesome. I got a spot on the wall over there for a silver play button one day. So for example, generally what people might do is they might look at the prices that CEX sell things for and then go and undercut them a little bit and stick it on Vinted or eBay or whatever. But then you have to deal with all of what that entails, the listing of it, the dealing with people bidding on it or like talking to you about it, potentially being messed around and things like that, and then having to ship it out yourself and hope for the best in terms of that it gets to them in condition that they are then going to be happy with and not try to refund it. And it just, none of this is particularly that difficult to actually deal with. It's just a case of it is more stuff to deal with versus the convenience factor of walk into CEX and most of the time on the same day walk out with some amount of money, you know? It's a case of if you want to walk out with more money from whatever it is that you have sold, you then have to put in more work. And for some reason, the work isn't worth the amount of money that they would have saved because their time is so valuable. It all just depends on the person and what they value most, you know? But when it comes to actually buying things from CEX, I think that they're one of the best places around. There are very few places in the UK that we can, on the internet right now, go, I want this random ass game from like 2 decades ago. Where can I go today to buy it? And just walk out of there. Furthermore to that, where can I go today to buy this 20-year-old thing and then guarantee that it will work? Because here's the thing, is that everything CEX sells comes with a 2-year guarantee. So if you were to by chance buy something and it didn't work, you get your money back or you get a replacement. They fix the problem. There are very few things where this is something that you can do. There are alternatives to CEX, but again, it's hit and miss. It depends. For example, people like saying, oh, CEX versus eBay. That's not even a comparison that you can really make due to the fact that eBay isn't an entity that sells you things. eBay is a platform that individual people use to sell you things. So it depends. Your experience with eBay and how much you're going to spend and how easy that process is going to be just depends on the person that you are dealing with. I bought things from eBay before where it came next day. I bought things from eBay before where they didn't even ship it for 2 weeks following purchase. You know, it all just depends. The convenience factor of buying from CEX is difficult to beat, especially considering that our choices as physical game collectors is so low these days that we don't have much options. If you don't have an independent game store near you, you can't go and support them. That's not a thing. If your game, like mine, is utterly useless, you can't go and buy a new game from Game. Like, it's genuinely easier to buy ancient games now than it is brand new games, and that's thanks to CEX. If we didn't have CEX, where would we buy all of this stuff from? And I don't think CEX gets any credit for that, you know? If it wasn't for CEX, good luck with PS2, PS3 stuff, or even further back than that. When people talk about game collecting, they talk about like other sources for getting games, like car boot sales and things like that, cash converters, charity shops, where things could, be cheaper than CEX, but it doesn't come with any guarantees. I love CEX for the guarantee of I can look at the stock checkout right now, and if a game says it is in stock, I can go to that CEX and buy the game. If by some unlucky chance I get there and they can't find the disc, because that does happen sometimes, there is then a workaround. You can then buy it for delivery, and because they don't physically have it, they have to send it out to you and void the delivery payment. Because again, that is something else that I don't like about CEX, is when you order online from CEX, you have to pay nearly £3 per item on your delivery. So for example, if you buy, 10 games for £3 each, say they're old PS2 stuff and they're pretty cheap now, you spent 30 quid on games, but you got 10 games. Cool. But if you ordered them online, you've also had to pay £3 per item. So now you have doubled how much it cost. You have now spent 60 quid, whereas if you'd have got those from in-store, it would have been 30 quid. But again, there is that workaround where if you go to a store and they say they've got a game, but they actually don't, You can then click and collect it to that store. They then reject the click and collect and they send it to your house and you don't pay that £3 for delivery. That's happened quite a few times. So basically, as long as you follow the stock checker and go with whatever game it is that you are trying to get in mind, you will always end up with that game for the price that it currently is. Whether or not you get it that day because you physically got it in the shop because it was supposed to be there, which 9 times out of 10 it is, or if you get unlucky and for some reason they can't find the disc or anything like that, you do the click and collect trick and you end up with the game a few days later without having to spend any more money than you would have done otherwise. It's the convenience factor and it's the ultimate win for me. I think it's interesting. Whenever I've bought an expensive game and I've made TikToks about it, you get people who are like, oh, it's cheaper on eBay, it's cheaper on eBay. eBay give you more. And then they send you the link and you look at the link and it's like, what they've sent you isn't exactly actually what you've bought. So for example, you buy an expensive PlayStation 2 game and it comes complete with a manual. They've sent you a version of it that isn't PAL, they sent you a version of it where it's a reproduction case or it's a disc only or there's no manual and all that sort of things. And now we're looking at two different products in essence here. We're not looking at the same thing anymore. Or sometimes things are so blatantly a scam that it doesn't make sense. I've been sent links before to stuff on eBay that if the person is charging so little for their eBay that they could have taken it to CEX and CEX would have given them more cash. Do you know how badly they have got to have priced their eBay item for that to happen? Now granted, sometimes people are just a little bit silly and do that and you can get really good deals if you catch things like that. But often, a lot of times, things like that are just... they're lying about what they've got. Like, they're trying to sell something as real when it actually wasn't, you know? Because if it was and they took it to CEX, they could get more money more easily, but they might get caught out on it, you know? So this is the problem with eBay, is you never know who you're dealing with on the other end. A thing that I love eBay for that CEX doesn't have is how more specific I can be, for example, with steelbooks and games that CEX don't list. So there are quite a few games that you just can't buy at CEX because they're not listed. For example, a lot of Game Boy games that I like just were not listed. When I did the collection valuation and we went through and discovered a good half of the Game Boy games that I currently own, CEX don't sell. Or eBay can be good for getting games that are out of stock at CEX. Granted, every single time I've had to buy a game from eBay that was out of stock at CEX, I have spent more than it would have cost had I gotten it from CEX. So a lot of people say, oh, eBay is always cheaper. It really isn't. A lot of this one sounds silly to say because it just makes too much sense for it to not sound like it makes sense, but some people just clearly don't understand it because of the comments that I get on TikTok. People are like, oh, it sold for less, but you paid more for it, so you got scammed. And it's like, it might have sold for less a month ago, but we are not time travelers, and therefore the sold price doesn't matter too much if I want the game today. If I want to go on the internet, click a button, and within the next couple of days have the game that I want to play, I am at the mercy of whatever the market is at that moment in time. It's like when you come to investing, the best day to invest anything was always yesterday. Yeah, it might have been less money in the past, but that was in the past and we're not time travelers. Buying and selling are two different things. So to a buyer, sold listings are not exactly very helpful because, yeah, you get an idea of what it went for before and therefore what a fair price is. But if every single listing for that game at that moment in time is more than the previous sold listings, well, then the market has moved and changed and adjusted. There is a new set price for that game because time has passed, you know? And there's nothing that you can do about that. As a buyer, you are simply at the mercy of what the market currently is, not what it was. That's just how it works as a buyer. The sold listings are more relevant to sellers so they can get a fair price for whatever it is that they're selling. And on the extreme end, helpful to a buyer to make sure they're not extremely overpaying for something, perhaps. Oh, and by the way, I do severely recognise the fact that CEX should be paying me to say some of these things, but CEX has never paid me a penny, despite the millions of views I've garnered them over my platforms over the last year. But yeah, I just like the fact that CEX is the only place that we can go into right now and get almost anything for sure. I love the for sure aspect. That's why I like in-person stuff. It's why I would always choose to like buy clothes in person versus ordering them online and waiting. I'm an impatient person. I really am. And for people like me, I love CEX. I get why other people might not like it. I get that a lot of people get a burnt taste in the mouth over the fact that they didn't get given much for whatever it is they took in and they thought it was valued at more. And then a lot of people are turned off to the entirety of the company because of that idea. But I think that objectively it is a great thing that we have it, because if we didn't have it, then what? You know, how are we going to be able to guarantee ourselves these things? You just have to get lucky at cash converters or charity shops or car boot sales. And 9 times out of 10, you ain't going to get lucky with them because someone else that does it professionally has probably beat you to it. Because trust me, there are some very, very intense people around when it comes to collecting games that will be the first people there at every possible opportunity, and they will beat you. They just will. And before I go, I just want to talk about Odeon and cinema stuff, because the amount of the amount of times that I've been going to the cinema in the last couple of months has been mental, but not necessarily to see new films. Like, if you guys, again, Odeon don't pay me either, but they probably should. If you guys like the cinema, like not even new stuff, but just like older stuff, having a Limitless pass is well worth it. Like, I think Limitless costs about £17.99 a month, and cinema tickets where I am range from £20 to £25 per ticket. So if you even see one film a month, you're saving money. And like, in the last few months and in the upcoming months, I've seen so many like older films that it's awesome. Like, tomorrow I'm going to see the original Gladiator. Today we're seeing a new film, Transformers 1. In a couple of weeks we're seeing Back to the Future 2. We're seeing Saw. We're seeing Nightmare on Elm Street. Again, all anniversary showings. Anniversary showings this year, there's been so many. All of the Batman films have been shown. Most of the Harry Potters. All of the Lord of the Rings films. The Matrix was back. Terminator was back. Terminator gets shown like every single year. Like, loads of films that you wish you would have had an opportunity to see in the cinema when it came out, but you didn't. So yeah, realistically, if you guys are film guys and have been considering Limitless, I'd really look into it, because the amount of stuff that gets shown that you wouldn't even realise unless you were looking every day is crazy. All the Spider-Man films. In the last like 3 months, I have seen all of the Tobey Maguire films in the cinema. I've seen all of the Andrew Garfield's films in the cinema again. What else? Do you know what I really wish would come back that hasn't yet, and I think it might in the next couple of years because there's some anniversaries coming up? Pirates of the Caribbean. I've never seen a Pirates of the Caribbean film in the cinema, or at least none of the original 3. I saw the 5th one, but that doesn't count. The first 3 are the ones that matter. I want them to come back in the cinema because they'd be perfect for a cinema experience. What else have we seen recently? We saw Shaun of the Dead for that 20th anniversary. I saw the original Crow before the Crow remake came out. I think we saw the original Halloween, Ghostbusters, Wizard of Oz like a year or so ago. Off the top of my head, other anniversary showings of recent: Psycho, Exorcist, Event Horizon, 2001: A Space Odyssey. Like, all-time classics keep being put back in the cinemas, and I don't know if it's indicative of a lack of new content coming out, but I don't mind too much, because again, it's stuff that I would have loved to have seen at the cinema when it released, but in a lot of these instances, I wasn't born, so, you know. But to touch on the price of the cinema again, and just go on a little bit of a rant, I really don't understand why people spend so much money to go to the cinema to be on their phones and talk to their mates. It's like, if you wanted to watch a film and be on your phone and talk to your mates, stream it at home. Most new films simultaneously release anyway. Like, you can do that, and then not bother anyone else, and not potentially get into some big boy problems, as it were. So it's like, I don't get it. Like, for example, if some noodle-haired 18-year-old's taking his 16-year-old girlfriend out to the cinema for his first date before he takes her to McDonald's and his course or afterwards, and he wants to just sit on his phone the entire time or talk to her and be really annoying to everybody else in there, he could have paid for his ticket and her ticket, and if he's seeing a modern new film like a AAA release on a normal day, that might be £25 a ticket. He might have spent 50 quid just for him and her to go and see it. Now, if they're sharing a large popcorn and a drink, you're looking at another 15 quid on top of that. Fella might have spent 65 quid to go to the cinema to not watch the film properly. And I don't get it. I don't get it. Call me old-fashioned, call me a Karen, but I don't get it. Anyway, that'll do for today. See you in a bit.